All right. What is going on, everybody? It is an not quite emergency podcast, but definitely a podcast we wanted to get up here and react to the opening of trade season in the NBA following the Celtics continuing their home winning streak to go to 16-0, beating the Toronto Raptors. Finally, it feels like someone has forced them into a decision on where they want to go with their future. So come on, join us in the room here, and let's talk about what's going on in the NBA right now. What's up, everybody? This is Will Weir checking in with you. How you doing? How you living? Joining me here, I've got the lead writer of Celtics blog. It's my man, Adam Taylor. Adam, Celtics take down the Raptors on a back-to-back, and after an overtime back-to-back. Raptors have several days of rest. The Celtics do not have Jason Tatum. They do not have Kristaps Porzingis. They do not have Al Horford, yet they still find a way to get it done. And along with the Chicago Bulls, it feels like the Toronto Raptors have been the two teams that have been sitting in limbo for maybe about a year, maybe a year and a half of when are they finally going to make a move? Well, it feels like after last night, the TD Garden, the Raptors decided enough was enough, and they finally made a move, sending OG Anunoby and Precious Achuiwa to the New York Knicks in exchange for RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, and a second-round pick. Adam, give me your initial thoughts, man. Let's just riff on this.
Yeah, I mean, jokes. Let's make the joke first, man. You lose to a short-handed Celtics. No Jason Tatum, no Kristaps Porzingis, no Al Horford. You get a 20-piece off of Luke Cornett. You know, that's an insult to some
they got
people.
Cornetted. They got cornetted.
Yeah, Cornet. There's an ice cream over here called a Cornetto. You got cornettoed, maybe. You got cream.
There we go. That's
you know
better.
What I'm saying? Look, man, Cornet's not that bad. It's not an insult to him at all, but it definitely feels like maybe this was the last straw. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe this is a deal. Deals don't usually happen that quickly anyway. Right. So there was probably some discussions going back and forth, and then maybe they see that they lose to the Celtics in a close game. But if the Celtics were full strength, that's probably closer to a blowout than it is to a close game.
And that's what I think is probably the smack in the face of reality for the Raptors, which was a long time coming, right? Because this experiment, despite them having pieces that I think all of us around the league are like, oh, I really like Scotty Barnes. He's becoming a star. Pascal Siakam has been an all-star, has been all NBA. OG, they were trying to get 3 first-round picks for him last year, and he was getting some early season, defensive player of the year buzz. Like, they have good pieces, but it just clearly wasn't working, right? They're in 11th place or whatever they are in the East right now for a reason. And so last night, when you're at full strength and you can't beat the team that is the team right now in your conference, when they're on the second night of a back-to-back, they just came, all of the pieces, this is a schedule loss. This was a built-in schedule loss for the Celtics. They're coming off of a 4-game West Coast road trip. They come back and they immediately have a back-to-back. In the front end of the back-to-back, they go into overtime. And they still win, but they go into overtime and win. The next night, they got to come back, and they're without 3 of their top 6. This was a schedule loss, even without all the players not playing. And so when you have all of those factors together for the Raptors, it's like, what are we really doing here? What are we really doing with these pieces? If even though we made a nice comeback to get back into that game where they were down, 18 at different points, if this is the best that we're going to do, and they are still able to add Jason Tatum, they're still able to add Kristaps Porzingis, they're still able to add Al Horford, and we can't take down, Luke Cornett, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown. We can't take them out without some of their top line guys. Then what are we doing? We've got to find a way to reshift this. And apparently, like you said, these discussions were probably already being had in some form leading up to this. But last night must have felt like from Masai Ujiri, let's hit that button. Let's hit that submit button on this trade, and we got to go in a different direction. And now OG Anunoby's a Knick.
Yeah, and I think looking at how it's going to affect the Celtics when they face these teams again is important, right? Like,
yeah,
OG to me fits what the Knicks want to do a little bit more than what RJ did. He's not much taller. I think he's like an inch taller, but he's a completely bigger body. One of the better wing defenders in the NBA. Can score, can get his buckets. If he's a catch and shoot guy, we'll find out probably now. But putting him next to Julius Randle with Jalen Brunson there, having Precious Achuiwa to help fill that void left from Mitchell Robinson's season-ending injury.
Yeah.
The Knicks are going to be tough defensively, and they're already tough. Like, that's the Tom Thibodeau type of detail, right? You're always tough to break down. I think OG really complements what they do. The Knicks usually give Boston problems anyway. If we're being honest, right? We're not trying to be homerism. The Knicks are a tough matchup for the
Well, I
Celtics.
want to stay there for a second because I agree with everything you said about the OG part of this trade, right? Like, I think OG, he's 6'7", but he can really play kind of a bigger power forward if they want to go small because they don't have Mitchell Robinson anymore. Now you can kind of put Randall at the 5 and feel a little bit better with OG as your, quote unquote power forward. You're going to feel a little bit better. But one thing that I did want to point out about what you're saying here about the Knicks have given, even though the Celtics are 3-0 against the Knicks this year, last year they were 1-3. So the Knicks have given us trouble. But I think one of the big reasons they gave us trouble was Immanuel Quickley, because Immanuel Quickley, one of those really quick guards, and obviously it's different this year having Derek White, Andrew Holiday. I know Marcus Smart was here last year, but IQ was a guy that really gave the Celtics some problems. And so I think him, from a Celtics perspective, IQ no longer being on the Knicks, who are a team that you're going to see potentially in the playoffs. Toronto, they got an uphill battle, so we'll see, if this changes their trajectory for at least this season. But from the Knicks perspective, I think IQ no longer being there is actually a big plus from a Celtics perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we say it all the time, right? Them quick, shifty guards are and just an issue the Celtics have dealt with for years. The Ish Smith games. You can just insert shifty guard here, had big night against Celtics. And it happens all the time. Obviously, that's going to be a more of a problem when facing Toronto, because I've got a feeling that they're at least going to experiment with Quickley as the off guard, as the 2 guard next to Scotty Barnes. And just because of the way that spacing will work out. And it's kind of like a strength plus speed kind of tandem. But for New York, they do lose that explosive scoring off the bench. What they get in return is they get more Tom Thibodeau guys, right? I think that OG is a better player than what RJ Barrett is. I don't think that's an unfair statement.
How big of a gap do you think there's? Because initially...
Considerable.
You think it's considerable? Okay, I definitely agree that I think OG's the better player. I think the biggest difference for me between the two is a little bit of the size, and just OG on both sides of the ball, I think, is far more consistent.
There we go. And it's the defensive upside, right? I just think that OG's like a couple of levels above where RJ is as a defender right now. RJ is 23. Like, he's like, it feels like he's been in the league forever, right? So it's very easy to be like, oh, RJ sucks. This is who he is. No, it's not who he is. He's another 3, maybe 4 years away from where he's going to really be. So I don't think that it's a terrible deal. I don't think that I think RJ could have become that guy. But okay, shout out to my boy. I'm hoping it's Diogo da Costa.
Diogo da Costa, what up, dog?
Bill Simmons said that New York should flip the second round into Clarkson to fill the Quickley minutes.
That's interesting. I think that's actually a pretty good idea, right?
That's a great idea.
Because that's the one thing that, to me, when I first saw this trade, when it was OG for RJ, and if you just add whatever, I think they ended up getting a second-round pick. I was like, okay, that seems like a pretty fair bargain, especially when you consider that OG, and I assume New York's going to re-sign OG, that there's some type of, discussion that was had between, each of their sides, that's part of the expectation of this deal. But I was like, okay, that's probably a pretty fair deal. But when you add an IQ, I was like, damn, that's kind of a big loss for the Knicks. But if they were able to then take that second and whatever else would be required from salary perspective to go get Clarkson, now I think you're looking at something different from the Knicks. And that's where I think when you talk about how does this affect the Celtics, that's where I'm looking to see, all right, what else does New York have in store here? Because if you add Clarkson to replace that Quickley, void right now, which is that bench scoring void that can come in and kind of be a microwave type option, like Clarkson would be a hell of a replacement right there. And now all of a sudden, I don't know that I'm fearing the Knicks, but I think they're certainly scarier today than they were yesterday if they are to go fill that void. But I think I need to see one more move from the Knicks before I say that they're definitively a lot better after this trade.
A lot of the conversations surrounding New York recently, probably last 6 months, maybe coming into this season, was there's been steady progression, but you're kind of at a point where you're going to plateau because you need that next guy. Right. And obviously there's always been
this is like the Becky Hammond comments about like Jalen Brunson not being
I don't fully agree with what Hammond was saying, but I do at the same time. Do you know what I mean? I think you can say a guy is not the guy until he proves that he's the guy. Like,
That's always the case, right?
It's always the case, but
I
in
mean, even
terms
with
of
Tatum in certain circles, that's the case, right? Because he hasn't won it yet,
he's
right?
not the guy.
So there's a question to it.
I think when you look at the Knicks, it wasn't so much as needing a star; it was just needing to raise that bar a bit more and keep raising it until that star comes in and really pushes that bar. It's been different for Boston. They had their stars like built in Jalen and Jason, and to them it was the other way around. You keep hiring that bar by rotation guy, and you wait for the other stars to emerge or they fall into place, as they did this summer with Holiday and Kristaps. They kind of just fell into place, right? New York are on that stretch. For Toronto, I think facing Toronto is going to be a bitch next time they play Boston. They've just got size, they've got length, as you said, they've got Quickley. I think Barrett fits in better there. That young core is just going to keep getting better. That Barrett, Barnes, and Quickley. And they've still got some moves to be made, whether they decide to keep Siakam, whether they decide to flip him. But yeah, it definitely, I mean, and I know this is kind of taking a victory lap, but it definitely feels like Boston was the final nail in the coffin.
It really does, man. It really does. It feels like you said, they kind of looked around the room and, hey, man, like I mean, the writing's been there on the wall for a minute that something's got to change in Toronto. And last night, with the Celtics, with Luke Cornett having, such a big game, with being without all the guys that we've listed, it feels like, what are we doing here? Scotty Barnes was really good last night, right? And that's clearly, I think, the one thing for the Raptors this season they're going to be able to look at is, okay, we decided Scotty is our franchise guy. He's, as you said, for the Celtics, Jalen and Jason were kind of built into the plan. I think, at least for now, the plan for Toronto is let's build in Scotty Barnes and TBD what that ceiling's going to be with Scotty Barnes as your best player. But in year 3, he looks pretty damn good. Like, he might be an all-star this year. He's at least in that conversation. And so I think that's where this is trending towards. RJ, you're bringing him home, right? So that's a cool story that he's coming back. He's coming to Canada where, he's such a beloved figure, part of, their Canadian basketball program. And so I think it's a really good move overall. And I think when you put now Quickley is going to have a chance to have a larger role. I'm actually really interested to see what that looks like, because he's probably going to be their starter, I would assume. Like you said, maybe be off ball from Scotty Barnes a little bit, but obviously he's going to be able to handle the ball and he's great in transition. So I think him with that team and him getting more opportunity than he would, because it's really hard to play him and Brunson together when when he's with the Knicks, but now he's going to be surrounded by all of this length from RJ to Scotty to Siakam to Pirtle to even when, Gary Trent Jr. is out there. Like, there's a lot of length on this team. I think it's a good fit for Toronto. So I like what Toronto did getting Quickley in this deal. And I think it's going to be interesting next time we play them to see what that looks like. I know we have another comment in here. If New York trades for Clarkson, who's scarier for the Celtics in the playoffs, the Magic or the Knicks? Ooh, I like this question.
That's a tough one, right? I've been trying to think of it as I think it's the Knicks, right? And it's tough because out of the two teams, the player I'm the most scared of is Paolo, right? If I'm being honest, the player that I think has the bigger upside in a 7-game series is probably Paolo. I'm more scared of Paolo than I am Julius Randle, more scared of Paolo than I am Jalen Brunson. But when you add, if you add Clarkson to that mix, and you've got Anunoby, and you've got Randle, you've got Precious, you've got Brunson, Josh Hart, DiVincenzo, they're a tough team, man. I think Tibbs is a really, really good coach. He makes sure everyone's well prepared, and they've got a bit more experience. They've had a few playoff runs as a team now. They've had their, they had a first round exit the first year. Did they have a first round exit last season, or was it a second?
So they lost to the Hawks 2 years ago.
Yeah,
didn't make the playoffs, and then last year they beat the Cavs in the first round, lost to the Heat in 6.
So they've got that experience. Like, Orlando would be coming in as like,
this is your
yeah, exactly. And if you're facing Boston, who are like battle tested in the postseason, and you're coming in with your first postseason as a unit, that's tough, man. Like, I'm not as concerned. There's a lot of mistakes you're going to make. New York are going to be well drilled, man. So I'd be more scared of New York.
I think I'm with you that it's the Knicks, and it's interesting, right? Because I was trying to actually think of, am I more scared of right now, like talking about this present season, Paolo or Jalen Brunson would be my guy for the Knicks that I would look at. I just think Brunson's a gamer. I love Jalen Brunson. I think Jalen Brunson is freaking awesome. You look at that. If you're watching him on Christmas Day against the Bucks, he was spectacular in that game. Like, he was making unreal plays against a team that has a ton of size. So a team that you look to that, they're obviously their perimeter defense isn't what it once was. Oh, wait, that's right, because Drew Holiday is a Boston Celtic. So because you have Drew Holiday and Derek White on that perimeter that's going to be dealing with Brunson, it's kind of hard to say that Brunson would be, the guy that you fear more. And I think long term, obviously, Paolo has a ton of upside. I think the more I watch the Magic are great, man. They're really fun. I love everything that they're doing. Obviously, they've been giving the Celtics problems the last couple of years, and the Celtics seem to, in the last couple of weeks, try to exercise those demons. They really took that back-to-back in Boston to heart, right? Like, it was, we're sick of this shit. Like, we're sick of this young upstart team giving us the business. Like, we got to do something about it. And they showed that they can do that, which I think was a massive relief to all Celtics fans everywhere. But the more I watch the Magic, they just don't have enough shooting, man. It's a struggle for them to score. Their defense is great. They have a lot of, they have a lot of lengthy defenders, which I think can sometimes give the Celtics problems. They're just very big. But I think at the end of the day, the answer is the Knicks because of their experience, because they have two all-stars, borderline all-NBA type guys, Julius Randle, like whether you like him or not, and he kind of has been disappointment every year in the playoffs that he's gotten there. He's been all NBA 2 of the last 3 seasons. So that is a guy that you have to consider. Jalen Brunson, one of the best closers in the game. And then you add in OG, who, like I said, last year was flirting with defensive player of the year comps, right? And it wasn't one of those comps where it was like, all right, this is a little ridiculous. It was, no, that's a reasonable conversation. Like, he is an all NBA level defender. He's a guy that's going to be, 15, 3-3. He would like to see some more, action with the ball in his hand. So we'll see what that looks like in New York. But yeah, I think even honestly, without Jordan Clarkson, and I think it doesn't have to be specifically Jordan Clarkson, but I do think they need a little bit more scoring punch, specifically shooting scoring punch from the Knicks standpoint. I think the answer is still the Knicks, even if they don't have that guy, just because they have now Brunson, Randall, and OG, who's just, RJ, we've consistently wondered. We've had Jonathan Macri on here and other Knicks coverage, and we've always kind of left on the question of, what is RJ Barrett? Who is RJ Barrett to this team? And OG is going to be a much more consistent and raise the floor of what that team can be because of that consistency and what he can do with his size. So I think the answer, regardless of if they get Clarkson or a Clarkson-esque player, I think it's still the Knicks when it comes to them versus the Magic. But that was a great question, man. I do think that will be interesting to see how that plays out.
So I will say, if anyone's got any more questions, fire them off now, because we'll be ending in around about 3-4 minutes. I wouldn't mind one more dope one like that we could discuss and kind of deal with. Outside of that, man, I think this was a good deal on both sides. It opens up trade season, as you said at the top of the show. I don't expect the Celtics to be active. I really don't. I think Nimi is probably the guy that takes that 15th spot. If it's not him, maybe you see what starts to shake loose from the rest of the trade. Do you know what could be possible? And I doubt it, but it's always possible. Boston just kind of facilitate a deal and pick up somebody along the way.
Honestly, that's kind of where I'm leaning to. So I was rewatching the game from last night this morning, and especially because last night is one of those barometer games where it's like, all right, what does our depth actually look like? Let's take away a few of the layers, not all of them, right? Because then then you're looking at
it's unfair at that point,
right? Yeah. You can't really evaluate, but let's say that we take away some of the layers. What does this look like? And last night, it has me more and more leaning into if I'm Brad Stevens, I just don't need to force anything. I don't feel that the pressure to have to go force something. To your point, that doesn't mean the Celtics shouldn't be active in facilitating, or if something falls into their lap where it's like, oh yeah, 2 second-round picks and we have a $6 million trade exception from Grant Williams. Yeah, we'll do that. Like, but because now that the pieces are starting to move, right, the trade season opens, there may be possibilities that right now we're like, well, that was never something that we thought was on the table until, insert whatever trade happens or whoever gets moved and gets cut, different opportunities will open up. But right now, as I look at the Celtics team, I'm just not so sure that there's an immediate need. And we're going to have more podcasts where we talk about what trades might happen, what's available. But I think I'm really leaning into if healthy, from now until I forget what the trade deadline is, mid-February, late February.
Yeah, it's early February. It's like February 8th.
Oh, that's early this year. Okay. So it's February 8th, like between now and February 8th, which is really about 5-6 weeks. Unless there's some type of injury, I'm kind of at the point where I don't think the Celtics need to make a move unless something falls into their laps. That's just kind of where I'm at. Would you agree with that, Adam?
Yeah, I think that, sometimes making a move for the sake of making a move is an issue, because who you're bringing in is a human. They have a personality, and there's a very fine line between building on locker room personality and disrupting locker room personality. Everyone at the minute gets on. Obviously, we see the way they cheer for each other. We see the way they kind of like
The bench
build
was
each
going nuts
other up.
last night, right?
Yeah, dude. And
like
like
as
even
Luke
in
was
post
having his
games,
moments. Yeah, it was great.
even in presses, they're all building each other up. Jaylen Brown calling Luke Cornett the ultimate teammate during his post game yesterday. You don't want to risk rattling that. And that's why I feel like Nimi makes the most sense here. Just because he's already part of that locker room, right? All you're doing is taking away the two-way label and giving him a normal contract.
And on top of that, he's earning it, right? He's been
he's
playing
earning
great.
it, right?
You know, our guy Greg has been on this that, you know, next time he gets in, watch that man screen. That man is a brick wall. Like when you're trying to get around him, and you know, I feel like he's what we hoped Kabengele last year would be, right? But Nimi is 4 inches taller, 5 inches taller, thicker, wider, more athletic. Like he's everything that you could need in a guy that's going to be your fourth big, right? And he's showing potential. And I think when you combine him with Cornette as your, you know, third, fourth big option, it gives you versatility, because if you need the, you know, the consistent IQ, you probably go to Luke. If you need athleticism, you need somebody that's going to set some really jaw-dropping screens, you go to Nimi. You know, you need the athleticism, the energy. Like there's different ways that you can find, hey, this series, thinking about it from a playoff perspective, this series, Luke's the third big. This series, Nimi's our third big. You know, should we need them in certain
I think for me, I'm just not like, okay, so I've been quite big on Nimi screening too, but I think that the improvements have came on the West Coast trip. Before that, his screening was actually quite bad. Like they were a step late, a step too low. A lot of the times it was easy to navigate around him because he weren't getting really into the hips. He's doing all of that now, and he's really creating great separation. Can he do that in a playoff setting? I'm not sure.
Oh, I mean, I don't know yet, but I mean, I'm saying it's December 30th. Like, this is the
We've
point
got plenty of time.
This is the point of now until, you know, mid-April, right? Is to find out if he can or not. But I think he's certainly trending in the direction that you feel okay going forward with him and Luke, and not needing to make a move for another big. That would be my biggest thing.
I'd be happy with that. And you're keeping the locker room kind of like, I don't know what vibes, I guess you're keeping that.
And the vibes are high, man. The vibes are high. Let me ask you this here before we get out of here. I was rewatching, like I said, the game this morning, and Derek White in the fourth quarter, his approval rating is a rocket ship right now. As far as, I mean, people have always liked him since he got here. The love for him is hitting Isaiah Thomas.
Probably the most liked Celtic.
Right? And I think that's what I put today. I think he's the most popular Celtic on the team right now. Approval rating is, you know, 100 across the board. Last night, when he was either hitting shots or getting steals, diving on the floor, you're a wrestling guy, so you'll appreciate this, but the pop from the crowd, it legitimately, I put this on Twitter earlier, it feels like, you know, and this is, I'm dating myself as a wrestling fan, but it feels like that shattering of the glass when you're waiting for Stone Cold to come down. Yeah, and then the crowd just loses
He could be
shit.
the guy, dude. It's a WWE Day 1 on Monday, which is the first Raw of the year, and there's rumors that a retired WWE wrestler, former champion, will be making his appearance.
We can compare the decibels.
We'll be Derek White. Yeah, this is it, man. We should do that. We should have that like put together. I just wanted to also mention that everyone should be watching Day 1. Other than that, Derek White for me, do you know what my favorite part was? When he hit that, he drove the lane, hit a layup in the fourth, and then just screamed in his man's face, did the Jason Tatum, I want to flex on you. I was like, yeah, man, talk your shit, because you're an all-star. I don't care whether you get voted in. As far as I'm concerned, this is an all-star season from you. He's got some competition. Like the guards in the East are tough, man.
We'll hash that out on a podcast. Yeah, I think that's a fun topic to dig into those guards. But I think it's really hard to tell me that Derek White, with everything he's doing right now, is not going to be that guy, even if he doesn't score as many points as somebody.
You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Derek White, he is him. He is definitively him. I think he's going to be an all-star, but we'll hash that out later. But Adam, this was fun, man. Trade season's open. This is going to be one of what I assume will be several emergency podcasts that we'll throw together here as more trades happen, as more signings happen, and as we just get deeper into the season. But hey, man, it's been a great year. It's been fun doing the podcast once again. This is always a blast doing it. And dude, I'm not trying to make you jealous, but I am going to make you a little bit jealous.
I know you're going to see Wemby tomorrow.
I know. Me and Greg in person to go see Wemby tomorrow night, New Year's Eve. I can't wait to come back and talk about it with you.
Yeah, I want to hear about it. Try and take a picture of him. Stand next to him if you can, so I can get some.
Man, I'll do our best. We'll see how low we can get. See if we can get a
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to get that low for Wemby.
I know you'll be able to tell.
It's like going to watch a giraffe, man. Right then, everybody, it's been a blast. We'll catch y'all later. Thank you for tuning in. If you've been watching live, if you haven't been watching live and you're watching on YouTube on the playback, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit that Discord channel, baby. And Happy New Year.
Come rock with us. Happy New Year, everybody. See you in 2024.
Peace.